Have you ever noticed that the loudest voices in the productivity world always seem to be shouting from the back of a 4 a.m. cold plunge while running a marathon they didn't even sign up for? We've been fed a steady diet of grind culture for decades. Relentless, high-decibel narrative that glorifies the 16-hour workday and treats exhaustion as a badge of spiritual honor. If you are a deep-thinking introvert or a scanner with a dozen brilliant paths glowing in your mind, this hustle culture feels less like a roadmap and more like a high-speed treadmill that's currently on fire. You try to keep up. You try to build that muscle of tenacity and apply the deep work protocols we discussed, but eventually you hit a wall. You feel guilty for wanting to lie on the floor and stare at the ceiling. You feel like a failure because your prefrontal cortex, that high maintenance CEO of your brain, has decided to go on an unplanned sabbatical. You think the answer is to work harder, to squeeze more juice out of a fruit that is already a shriveled husk? But as your resident mind decoder, I am here to tell you that your exhaustion isn't a character flaw. It is a biological alarm. It is your brain's way of telling you that you are trying to outrun your own evolution. And frankly, you are losing to understand why working harder is a recipe for metabolic bankruptcy. We have to look at the cold, hard mathematics of your gray matter. Your brain is a masterpiece of efficiency, but it is also a massive energy hog. It accounts for only 2% of your body weight, but consumes 20% of your total daily calories. From an evolutionary perspective, nature absolutely hates waste. Our ancestors didn't survive by running in circles for 16 hours a day. They survived by conserving energy for the moments that actually mattered. In neuropsychology, we call this the principle of biological energy conservation. Your brain is hardwired to be lazy because, for 99% of human history, laziness was a survival strategy. When you force yourself into the grind, you are essentially telling your biology to ignore 500,000 years of safety protocols. You are revving a high-performance engine in neutral until the pistons start to melt. This brings us to the scientific pivot that changes everything, the Pareto Principle, or the 80-20th rule, but seen through the lens of neuroeconomics. In 1906, Vilfredo Pareto noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. Since then, we've realized this mathematical imbalance is everywhere. In your life as a multitasker or an introvert, it means that 80% of your perceived busyness, the endless email checking, the frantic context switching, the worry about those half-finished hobbies, contributes to only 20% of your actual progress. Conversely, there is a magic 20% of your effort that generates 80% of your M-shaped career success. The hustle trap makes you believe that you need to maximize the 80% of shallow effort, when in reality, you just need to identify and protect the 20% of deep impact. Your scanner brain, which thrives on connections and far transfer, is actually uniquely suited for this kind of efficiency. You weren't meant to be a worker bee. You were designed to be a strategic integrator who finds the shortcut between different worlds of knowledge. The pain you feel right. Now that fried brain sensation is actually a phenomenon called decision fatigue. Every time you quickly check a notification or decide which of your 40 open tabs to close, you are performing a metabolic withdrawal from your mental bank account. By the time you get to the work that actually moves the needle, your CEO is bankrupt. You aren't lazy. You were just cognitively pauperized by tiny, useless choices. To stop the drift, we have to stop worshiping the hard-earned work and start worshiping the leverage. We need to move from a state of reactive grind to a state of evolutionary efficiency. Need to acknowledge that your desire to do less is actually your brain's way of trying to save your life. Today, we are going to dismantle the neuroindustrial complex in your head and replace it with a system that honors your biology rather than fighting it. We're going to stop trying to be a specialist who works more and start being a polymath who thinks smarter. But before we build the bridge, we have to stop the leak. We have to identify the cognitive residue that is currently harvesting your potential before you even finish your first coffee. So if we agree that working harder is just a high-speed lane to metabolic bankruptcy, What is the this that you should do instead? It is a process I call neural leverage. It is the art of using your biology as a force multiplier instead of a friction point. Most of us treat our daily tasks like a massive pile of laundry we have to sort through by hand, one sock at a time, until our backs ache and our spirits break. But a CEO or a truly high-functioning polymath treats their day like an electrical grid. We are going to stop being the exhausted electrician trying to fix every single wire and start being the architect who only flips the specific switches that light up the entire building. The secret to this architectural shift lies in identifying the high voltage 20%. For the scanner brain, the biggest energy leak is the should list. You feel like you should check every notification. You should finish that 14th century pottery book you started on Tuesday. And you should reply to every Slack message in under 3 seconds to prove you are a team player. This is the shallow 80%, a collection of tasks that consume nearly all your metabolic fuel, but offer almost zero actual movement on the paths that define your M-shaped career. To stop the leak, you must apply the principle of outsourcing the CEO. Since your prefrontal cortex isn't expensive, high-energy diva, we must stop making it work as a filing clerk. You need an external, RAMA-trusted system like a Zettelkasten or a digital garden where every random spark of curiosity and every minor task is immediately offloaded. When you write it down, you are providing your brain with a biological cheat code called psychological closure. You are telling your neurobiology it is safe to forget this now. The hard drive has it. This instantly flushes the RAM of your mind and clears the cognitive residue. Suddenly, the one deep task that actually matters, the coding project, the strategic narrative, complex problem solving becomes effortless because you aren't fighting the ghosts of 100 unstarted tasks. You are no longer wasting energy on the friction of indecision. You are gliding on the momentum of focus. This is where your polymathic nature becomes your greatest strategic advantage. Specialists are trapped in a single narrow lane. They have to work harder and harder just to stay relevant in a changing world. But as an integrator, you use the cognitive superpower of far transfer. You don't need to grind for 40 hours to solve a problem. You need 1 hour of high-level synthesis, where you look at a challenge in your primary pillar and solve it using an underlying structure found in a completely different field. This isn't hard work. It is high-value work. 1 hour of polymathic insight is worth 40 hours of specialist repetition. By focusing on your legs of mastery one season at a time, you are honoring your brain's desire for novelty while protecting its shriveled metabolic battery. You're being strategically lazy in the mundane so you can be brilliantly intense in the monumental. Finally, we must address the most controversial part of this biological reset, the necessity of strategic inertia. In a world that worships at the altar of doing, the most productive thing you can do is often absolutely nothing. In neuropsychology, we look at the default mode network, the part of your brain that activates when you are bored, resting, or staring blankly at a park bench. This is the workshop where your most creative connections are forged. When you are grinding and hustling, the default mode is suppressed. By intentionally scheduling periods of low-output stillness, taking a walk without a podcast, or sitting in a quiet room with nothing but your thoughts, you are giving your brain the silence required to hear the music in the data. You aren't wasting time. You are performing a biological defragmentation. You are clearing the cache so that when you return to your 20%, your brain is a focused laser rather than a scattered light bulb. The self-blame ends today. You aren't a dabbler who lacks character. And you aren't a failure because you can't survive a 16-hour workday. You are a high-performance machine that has been using the wrong operating manual. You were designed for leverage, not for grinding. Stop surviving your Monday and start engineering it. Pick your first 90-minute sprint. Externalize your distractions. And most importantly, give yourself permission to be exactly as efficient and as brilliantly lazy as evolution intended you to be, to help you identify your high voltage, 20%, and build your first external RAM system. I have created a new tool for you called the Neural Leverage Map. It is a simple framework for auditing your energy. closing your open loops, and designing your first M-shaped season of mastery. You can download it using the link in the description. Stop pecking at the glass screen for random pellets of attention. Reclaim your focus. Rebuild your IQ. Decode your mind. I'm the Mind Decoder, and I'll see you in the next one.